Recording started.
Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the webinar. So those of you just joining us, we're just getting started. Welcome to Introduction to Green Technology. Today's webinar is a presentation of the New York State and CSEA Partnership for Education and Training. My name is Claire Miller and I'll be your host this morning. Our facilitator today will be Tom Baccarella. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few tools we'll be using in the webinar today. For those of you who are here early, you've already practiced using the chat box. That's a great way to let us know if you have a comment or a question, and you can type things in on the right-hand side. I'd like you to try using one other tool we'll be using today, which is the raise hand button. That is found at the bottom of the participants panel, and it looks like an icon of a hand in the air. If you have a question or a comment, or you'd just like to get our attention, you can click on the raise hand button, and that will let us know that you're looking for us to call on you. Let's go ahead and practice using that now if you haven't already, and you should see a little hand come up next to your name. And then to lower your hand, great job, everyone is working that. To lower it, you just simply click the same button again. So pretty straightforward there. Okay, so today's facilitator, Tom Baccarella, is a 27-year veteran of the Long Island construction industry. He is also certified HERS rater and energy consultant with the New York Building Technology Group. Baccarella is also the Director of Operations for Habitat for Humanity in Nassau County. His primary focus is on energy-efficient housing for low-income families. He's worked as a subject matter expert for several programs, including the National Center for Construction, Education, and Research, the Sundance Channel, Pearson Publishing, and of course, working with us today at the partnership. I'd like to turn things over to Tom this morning. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Claire. I got a little notice that said, "Thank you. You are the presenter." Thank you, Claire. I'd like to by saying I realize these webinars tend to be really impersonal because on the other end of a phone, there's little hand raise buttons and unmute buttons. But I would like to ask, starting off, that anytime you have a question, anytime you have a comment, just unmute and start talking. If I was in the room, you'd be throwing things at me, so we might as well go with that from the beginning. Now, this class is the whole idea here is just to kind of hit on new technology, green technology, some basic sustainability, but we're going to kind of concentrate on the technology and on the toys. Again, if you've got questions, if you've got thoughts, hit your unmute. Free to jump in at any time with questions. I'd much rather not, wait till the end and kind of have everyone listen to me speak for an hour and then, maybe a chance to get a question in at the end. Better to make a conversation out of it.
Okay. Could I just jump in really quickly and let folks know that to unmute their phone, just use #5. That'll unmute your phone so you can jump in and ask questions of Tom. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, let's start off with the basics. Sustainability. There's a commission on environmental and development. It came from the UN at some point. Development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That in simple English, how to use stuff and not run out of it. The big issue. We're adding more and more people. We're using more and more resources. Eventually, it's inevitable that we'll run out. The goal is to come up with ways to either sustain it, that we run out 1,000 years from now or 100 years from now and not 10 years from now, and or to simply figure out a way to not run out at all. If we come up with renewable technologies, things that simply don't run out that we could replace, with the potential of not, killing ourselves off in 1,000 years. Okay. Issues. Pollution, oil, there's a lot of politics going on with oil, and cost. A lot of our economy right now centers and revolves around the cost of fuel. Oil, natural gas, it's a big portion of our economy, and things tend to go better or go south based on what the fuel is doing. Back in the 70s, we had the big oil embargo. The economy tanked. Everything went south simply because we couldn't get enough oil to run industry. Right now, we're in pretty good shape because we have a glut of natural gas, but there are some issues with how we're getting the natural gas. I'm sure you've heard about fracking and things of that sort. And you have to kind of look at it and say, well, at what point are we, when are we helping ourselves and when are we just causing more damage? Okay, let's start off with a polling question. Claire, you want to take this one over?
Sure. And one second, let me just take back my option to do that. Okay. So I'd like you to notice I have opened a polling question on the right-hand side. So you can answer, Tom, which of the issues is most important to you. The easy way to do this is to just click next to the letter of the option that you think is the most important issue at the time, and then hit submit. I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to collect their answers, and then I'll actually share the responses so Tom can go over them with you. For those just joining us on the phone, welcome. We're working on a polling question right now. It's open on the right-hand side. Which of the following issues is most important to you? I see answers coming in, which is excellent. And I'm going to give it a few more seconds here. And you will notice, folks, that when you participate in the poll, the participant panel and the chat panel with those tools to communicate, those collapse. So when you're done answering the poll, just click on the small blue triangle next to both of those items, and they'll reopen for you. Again, they haven't disappeared. They just got squished because the polling question opened. I have a few answers still rolling through, so I'm going to keep it open just a couple more seconds here, Tom.
Okay.
Great. We have a lot of folks who participated in that. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to close that poll, and I'm going to share the results. You're seeing that shortly. There you go, Tom.
Yep, there's. Okay, it looks like the clear winner, depleted natural resources. Okay, were you guys just hearing me, or I'm not sure if you did it. The webinar is taking a few seconds to catch up, but it looks like our choice answer here is depleted natural resources. That's probably the most drastic one, because one we simply can't get back from. When we run out, we're out. The Earth is a finite place. Run out of anything, and it's done for good. There's no more getting it back. Other ones, climate change, pollution, we can fix those over time. The one we can't fix is the natural resources. It's a shot deal. We run out, we're done. I'm going to go off with climate change. Let's tackle that a little bit. Notice they say climate change now. Nobody's saying global warming anymore. That's mostly because it depends on where you're sitting. You're in an area that was warm, there's a chance it's going to get colder. If chance that's cold, a place that's cold, very likely it's going to be warmer. These are a pretty complex place, and it's not like the whole planet just simply gets warmer at once. The ice melts. The ice melts into the ocean. So you get giant plumes of cold water that move around. That cold water tends to travel south or towards the equator and cool off areas that would have otherwise been warmer. Basically what we're going to get is change. They're not going to be the way they were. Whatever you were used to from 50 or 20 years ago, it's just going to start changing. We're getting a lot more serious climate. We're getting more hurricanes and major storms and dust bowls and things of that sort. Again, just because there's change. This year, there was some issue about whether or not there's actually global warming because it was a cold winter. I just start off with this. There's doubt that Earth is warming. Even the skeptics, even the scientists that are real big on this whole climate change issue, agree that there's global warming. It's simple. We just pull out thermometers and look at past history, and we could tell the Earth is warmer now than it was before. Heavy snow this winter notwithstanding, the Earth is getting warmer, no doubt about it. The question seems to be whether people are causing it or whether it makes a difference. There are scientists that still aren't willing to say proven that human beings are causing global warming. And there's others who are saying that maybe it's not the end of the world, maybe it's not a bad thing. Global warming might not be that significant. I think we're starting to see the results of it. I happen to live on Long Island, and for the first time in pretty much in Long Island history, we took 2 major storms years in a row and flooded out the coastline. Really hasn't been touched in hundreds of years. 2 in a row, a major catastrophe. Something's going on. Now, how does it work? Forward, more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere is a greenhouse gas. In other words, it lets the heat in, it doesn't let the heat out. You let more heat in and out, the temperature goes up. The cause, some of it, the whole idea of greenhouse gases and it's a cycle. Occurrences, forest fires, volcanoes, even just normal swings due to El Niños and La Niñas and weather patterns will affect it, and it'll bump up and down on a regular basis. What we're finding is now it's kind of only going up, and it's going up more severely and more quickly than it's ever done before. Common things are, the more significant things, I should say, are fossil fuel use. We dump more and more carbon into the atmosphere. Every time we burn fuel, we're putting it in the atmosphere. Now, fossil fuels are made by carbon being captured by plants and marine and sequestering it back into the earth. The issue is we pump it out amazingly fast. It takes millions of years to put it back in. So it's mostly a matter of ratio. We're pumping into the atmosphere a lot faster than the Earth can take it back out. We're also slowing down the amount that gets taken out by cutting down the trees. The trees are the things that plant life is what absorbs the carbon dioxide in the first place, puts it back in the earth. More trees we cut, deforestation, as we're cutting things down for housing, for buildings, for development, we're taking out the one thing that would stop climate change. So cutting a lot of trees down, wiping out a lot of forests to make way for land. We have more people. We need to feed more people. We need land to grow food. Right into overpopulation. The more people we have, the less place we have trees for plants that are going to be absorbing that carbon dioxide. Okay, here's the 30-second version of the carbon cycle. There's carbon dioxide, CO2, and methane, and all sorts of gases in the atmosphere. Trees. See myself a pen here. Okay. The trees absorb carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis, basically, they take carbon dioxide and using sunlight, they convert it into sugar, which is basically how all life works on the planet. The plants convert sunlight and carbon dioxide into sugar. And the animals, the mammals, the predators, we eat the sugar in one form or another. That's how we survive. We end up bringing that carbon dioxide back out when we break it down with oxygen and they turn it back into carbon dioxide. It goes back into the atmosphere. Normally, the ocean is a sink carbon dioxide. All that little plankton and marine life constantly absorbs carbon dioxide. As it dies, it settles to the bottom, and over the course of millions of years, those sediments down and turn into fossil fuels. But basically, the carbon is stored in the earth again. We're pumping it out of the ground. We're using it to run our factories, to run our cars. We're pumping it back into the atmosphere. Is really the big one. Fossil fuel use is really what's making the biggest difference because we can really move carbon dioxide quickly back into the atmosphere. Everything else happens at a really slow pace. There are millions of trees and bits of plants and absorb it really slowly, and life in general, things that are bringing it, put it back in really slowly. Suddenly we're pumping it out at a massive rate, fuel out at a massive rate, and we're pumping it back into the atmosphere. That's the issue right now. That's what we're looking to fix with all these technologies. Okay, pollution, natural resources, that's pretty obvious. You look at the oceans, look at all of the clam beds and the oyster beds and things that are simply dying off because of pollution from sewage. For a while, we had an issue with hypodermic needles floating around in the ocean. You couldn't go to the beach. That's pretty straightforward. Air pollution, especially from fossil fuels, another one that's pretty obvious. If you see pictures of China and Vietnam, people walk around with face masks on because the diesel particulate in the air in the cities is so bad that they can breathe the air. We plenty of cities here, even California has ozone alerts. They have pollution alerts. We pollute our air so badly that we can't even breathe it. Another one is materials and resources, especially the exotic ones. We're starting to run out all of those slightly exotic, slightly odd materials and metals and minerals with strange names that we use for our society, the things that make our transistors and our computers. It's more and more difficult to find them. We're running into with the obvious ones. We've hit we call peak, where we're using it faster than we can get it to the ground, and we've peaked on a lot of things already. Anybody in the construction industry suddenly noticed that the price of copper was going through the roof. There's no copper anymore. It's getting harder to dig it up, so the price is going up. Iron, we still have plenty of it, but it's really difficult to get it out because it's not in the surface anymore. So you have to tear up more and more landscape to find it. We've been taking all of our scrap iron and shipping it back to China so they can make new things with it, simply because we can't get up fast enough on our own. Odd materials. The big one is obviously oil, but there's a lot of odd ones, a lot of real, like I said, chemicals with really strange names we simply can't get enough of anymore to keep our society running. Okay. Politics of oil, it's starting to change. There's been a big push because of the amount of natural gas we're producing now that we aren't as tied into oil as we used to be. However, that's not necessarily true for the rest of the world. A lot of the issues that are going on right now in Europe, Russia, and the old satellite countries of the USSR, there's little by little taking back pieces of its old empire, and Europe is really unable to do anything about it because they so rely on Russian fuel. They don't want to take a chance on insulting someone and not being able to get oil and trashing their economy. Okay, so what are we doing about it? Years back, Executive Order 4 came out. The governor came up with Executive Order 4, which basically said, this is from Governor Patterson in 2008, that government agencies were going to incorporate green permanent and sustainable initiatives. We were going to find ways in New York State to be green. It became really significant because New York State, the government itself, if you considered it an industry, is massive. It would be one of the largest in the state, obviously. And when you start looking at the economy of scale, they have 16,000 facilities. They spend $600 million a year on utilities. If you look at a 10% saving on utility bills, $60 million. They generate 1.6 billion pounds of waste. A small percentage is a massive amount. For 17,000 vehicles, it happens that government vehicles are the easiest to make changes to because they all tend to be fueled at the same place. They all tend to operate out of the same place. Whereas everyone drives their car from their driveway, everyone drives a state vehicle, state facility. So if you want to run vehicles on an alternate fuel, if you wanted to run them on natural gas or on electric, it's pretty simple to set up one station to work from, one natural gas station, and drive everything out. Also 17,000 vehicles, savings per vehicle becomes really significant. And they spend $8 billion a year on purchases. New State, they're the big buyer. So if they start asking for green things, green stuff, whatever it is, pretty quickly the suppliers and the people who are making it and selling it will gear up for that green business. Again, economy of scale. If you sell enough of it, you can do it at a profit. If it's a small little boutique business, it's really difficult to be competitive. But moving enough of it, suddenly you can do it competitively. So the fact that New York State is buying green means that everyone else around it, all of the other offices, all of the other businesses, now they can get a better deal on green items simply because it's more of a big business and it's no longer a boutique industry. Oh, just no questions so far. Nobody wants to get in? Nobody wants to yell at me? I'll keep going. New York State's goals. Prevention, recycling. One of the things we've come up with, as a matter of fact, down where I am, I'm in town of Brookhaven. We've just started here. The municipality has started stream separation. We throw out all our recyclables into one big bin and taken to a sorting center. They're tipped, and they're sorted out and then sold. The milks are sold, the paper's sold. I found that without to make a big deal about sorting and separating to recycle, they can still, in a practical way, take everything that's thrown out, recycle it. For the bigger, for construction industry, for bigger amounts of garbage, for dumpsters or roll-offs, now is tipped onto a trash station floor and sorted by hand. And what I found is if they labor to sort this garbage by hand and separate anything that's valuable, all the recyclables, it's cheaper than taking it and dropping it all in a landfill. They can make more money on it by doing that than they can by dropping it in a landfill. It's suddenly become good business to be green. Limiting the use of toxic substances. We still are basically clueless as to what's bad for us. We know obvious ones, but every day we come up with something new that isn't particularly good for you. And little by little, what we're really starting to find is that too much of anything isn't good for you. And all these chemicals that we've been using and all of these toxins we've been using instead of natural things are just more likely to kill us in the long run. Energy standpoint, energy, that's the best thing for the buck. If you spend dollars to save energy, in the long run, save a massive amount of money. A lot tougher to come up with new ways to make it than it is to come up with ways to save it. For bang for the buck, conserving is always the best way to go. Renewable energy, this is a new industry, but we're working on it. Used to see in New York State a really big push to solar. They're up to 32 megawatts now of solar photovoltaics. The direction we're moving. You start seeing more and more wind generators. It takes it to gear up, again, because of that economy of scale. Until you're really putting up and moving a lot, the price doesn't come down. And then resource management. This is something that, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm wondering if how you think burning wood fits into all of this.
Well,
and wondering how I unmute my phone. How I used it again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. There's some ups and downs to it. On a small scale, burning wood's a great idea. If we're talking about, houses and small power stations kind of thing, what we call biofuels, burning wood, basically burning anything that grew directly. It's really well. Basically, any carbon that you burn and put in the atmosphere ends up coming back in when the trees regrow. And you do it on a sustainable scale. If you're growing it as fast as you're burning it, wonderful.
Good. Good.
for forestry, for forests themselves, pulling out all of that dead wood and burning it is actually a good thing for safety also, because the reason forests tend to burn, especially the big burns like you see on the West Coast, is because there's so much dead wood and it's fuel. Mm-hmm. If you keep a forest cleared of all of that extra fuel, forest fires tend to be really small because there's nothing to sustain them. The live trees don't burn anywhere near as well as the dead stuff does. So you try to keep the ground clear. You try to keep them separated. On a small scale, well-organized, it's a great idea. The problem you run into is you really wanted to power New York trees. You have massive crews of people with chainsaws cutting down entire areas. The Adirondack Park would disappear a lot faster than we could regrow it. That's really the issue with trees, with burnt firewood. There are other ways. There are things that grow really quickly that burn well, that we can be sustainable, but in the long run, it's always going to be small scale. It's perfect for somebody burning it in their house. I'd say the only downside for someone using wood as a fuel in their own home is the amount of soot and smell that you get out of it. You're burning wood, and you're particulates into the air for your neighbors. Again, you're putting in exactly as much carbon as the trees took out. Basically, the only things that's burning in your tree is carbon. The carbon and adding oxygen to carbon and turning it back into carbon dioxide. However, the carbon dioxide was put into the tree, grew. As long as you grow another tree, it's an endless cycle. No problem there. Problem is if you burn the trees faster than you grow the trees, which kind kind of went back to my point about scale. As long as you can burn them as fast as you grow them, it's zero carbon. Everything equals out. As soon as you start burning them faster, then you're growing them. That's
okay. I hope I didn't get off topic too much. Thank you.
That's a good topic. As good a topic as any.
Jacqueline, was that you with the question?
This was Chris.
Oh, Chris. Sorry. You had just asked how to remute your phone?
Yes, please.
Okay. When you're done chatting, you can just do #5 again. And that was a great question. I'm with you for it. And Tom, we're at the 30-minute mark.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Green space, conservation, and then these two, I'm going to break them up a little bit, but transitional technologies and emerging technologies. Conservation, again, is the easy one. It's the one we want to shoot for first. If they have it, we don't have to worry about running out of it. The wood ones, weatherization, steel the buildings up, make them tight, make them weatherproof. Energy that we're using from being wasted. The light bulbs, LEDs to replace regular incandescents. And fuel savings, we're looking at better power generation, better use of the electric grid, and some of the fancier technologies like heat pumps and condensing boilers, those kind of things from a conservation standpoint. We're still going to use fuel, but we're going to do it more efficiently. The traditionals, the reason I call them traditional is they're all things that won't eventually will end up disappearing. Right now, they are better than nothing, but in the long run, we want to get away from them also. This is one step up from what we were doing, but 2 steps back from what we need to do in the long run. Our vehicles from the natural gas. Gas burns somewhere around 20 to 25% better with less carbon, just because of the molecular makeup than oil or diesel fuel. We run on natural gas, we get vehicles, we get less carbon dioxide. Combined cycle power plants, I'll talk about in a little bit. Basically, typical plants, most of the energy gets wasted up the smokestack. If you come up with a series of electric generators using that same wasted heat and steal more and more of the heat, turn it into power, you can raise efficiency. Combined heat and power, we take the wasted heat from making electricity and we use it to heat the buildings. That's a pretty typical thing for state facilities, for large facilities. New York City, they make electricity and they sell the steam off to heat the buildings. And hybrids. We're burning gasoline, but we're burning it more efficiently simply because all of the wasted energy is stopping and starting back into running car. Okay, emerging. These exist, but typically they're not ready for prime time. The ones that we'll expect to see in 50 years, but right now they're more on the toy status than they are generation. For the amount of power we generate, there's still, I believe, somewhere in the 90-something% isn't from these technologies, wind turbines and solar. It's really small scale. Big picture, we're doing very little of it. However, it grows exponentially. Over the years, we'll keep getting more and more. We'll keep using less and less of fossil fuel plants. Electric vehicles, great, but we're still having a hard time making electricity. If you're making electricity with fossil fuel, then you haven't solved anything with an electric vehicle. We need them, though, because a little by little we are getting better with our electric grid, and we want to make sure that the cars are available when we're finally there. Biofuels, the alcohols, the E85, ethanol. I happen to run my truck on alcohol. Great power, run perfectly, much cleaner, and it's much like firewood, the fuel is renewable. Is grow as much grain or corn or grass as we burn as alcohol, it's net zero. We haven't added any carbon into the atmosphere. Cells, I'll talk about those in a bit, and the micro combined power and tidal and wave. Okay. It's really supposed to be about for you guys. How do these become SCA jobs? Where do you fit in? So let's go with the polling question. Do you think this will be part of your job?
Okay, to answer this one from Tom, simply click on the yes or the no. You can find these two tools in the participants panel. The yes looks like a green check mark, and the red looks like, the no looks like a red X rather. So just respond with Angela's responding, which is great. Honesty, John, thank you everybody. Okay, so you know these tools. And can see their responses on the right. Most people think that's a yes.
I'm not seeing the answers, but...
Okay, I just want to open the participant panel. There's a small blue triangle next to the term participants. It's on the right.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened is that polling question from last time probably collapsed. Did you get it?
Okay, yes, there it is. There it is.
All right.
Okay. What I say is for just about everyone, at one point or another, it will become part of your job where you are, switching professions. And, for instance, someone who works in a motor pool, someone works for DOT, there aren't going to be any diesels, which means your new job will be more now gas vehicles. For some other people, it's a little more subtle. You might simply be in a building that's powered by it. Your building will be on smart grid. The procurement you make will be for these kind of materials. I would expect that over the course of the next 10 years, everything that everyone does is going to have a green component. Every industry is going to be affected to some extent. It's just a matter of how much or how little. Okay, now, weatherization. Some of you have probably seen this tool here. It's called a board door. Basically, we fan in a door, we pressurize the building, and we tell how bad the drafts are. Become really commonplace. It's actually becoming part of the building code. All new buildings will be required to be tested. What's happening is it's not so much that the building is different or that the construction is done differently, that quality control happens. It's being tested at the end to make sure it's no leaks. The guy who are building it can't simply say it's good enough, because at some point someone will check them. Those drafts, a significant part of the energy loss. And we have what we call Energy Star homes. I happen to be a rater. That's part of my job, is to buy these Energy Star buildings. And I can tell you from experience that the same house that was built 10 years ago without Energy Star and without testing will cost twice as much to operate, or very close to it, compared to a newer house that's built and tested. The cushioning of these buildings has the biggest effect. The fact that we find the holes now, not wait till the energy bills are high and go looking for them. Some of the new industries that are cropping up around that are the fancy insulations, the spray foams, the sheet foams. We're starting to work. I happen to be working with cotton insulation that's made out of recycled denim. They take blue jeans and shred them up to make insulation out of them. Another one is thermography. We infrared cameras to figure out where all that energy is going, and locating it, we figure out how to not waste it. the leaks and plugging them, basically. Smart grid, smart metering. The electric grid is massive. It covers the whole country. It's really hard to think of electricity as being something that you have to keep up with, but every time you turn a light switch on, someplace or another, the generator has to spin up a little harder to cover your light bulb. If you've ever worked with a portable generator, as soon as you turn something on, it's a little bit of time for that generator to wind up and throttle up to start creating the extra electricity. That actually happens every time anyone turns on a light bulb or turns it off. As things change during the day, from day to night, on a sunny day, on a cold day, the entire grid has to constantly keep up. And one of the things they found is that by using a smart grid, they can find the best way to route power to where it has to go. With smart metering, so we also have the situation where we use the most electricity on the hottest day of the year in the middle of the afternoon. There's very little electricity at night because we don't really use much. We don't work during the night. We have some lighting going on, but all of the big things, industry, machinery, air conditioning for office buildings, that throttles down at night. So what they started doing is they started working with these smart meters. Basically, based on the meter, you could be charged less for power that you use when you are off-peak. If, same as the airlines, they want to fill empty seats, they do less on off-peak. Well, for electricity, if you're using it when the power grid has extra, you less. When using it when the power grid is really at the verge of falling apart because it's taxed, you pay more. You know, if the electric grid is almost power, you're going to pay top dollar for it. If electric grid is sitting there not being used because there's so many things off, they'll give you a discount on it. The smart grid and smart meter, how they're going to figure out the pricing on that, and it's an incentive for bigger companies and bigger operations to work at night or to air condition at night, things like that. Okay. Tied into that, thermal energy storage. It's about as simple a system as you can go with. You make a giant vat of ice all night when the electricity's cheap, and you run air or water through that ice and use it to cool the building off all day. So less for electricity because you're using it at night. The power suppliers are happy because they don't have to worry about your air conditioning during the day. Your air conditioning's running at night when they're not worried about electricity. During the day when they're at full capacity, you're off. At night when they're at half capacity, you kind of kick on and level the playing field. So they're using the same amount day and night for everyone. You know, they'd rather have their generators run the same speed all the time than have to fire everything up during the day and hope they have enough and then shut it all off at night and have it wasted. Combined cycle heat and power. Here looking at you, instead of efficiencies based on the temperature in and the temperature out. Regular gasoline or diesel motor is particularly efficient. Best you can get is maybe 25%, 30%. If steam turbines, it's 30 to 35%. If you use super hot, if you burn it really hot in a really hot combustion engine like a turbine, you start off by running it really hot. The potential is there to have a really high efficiency. If at the end it's really cool. So what they do is they run a gas turbine which runs super hot and makes super hot exhaust gas. And then there's that exhaust gas to make steam, and they have a second generator that's now a standard steam turbine, and they use the steam to spin another generator and make more heat. So they call it combined. Then what they do is they take the heat that's finally left over and they use it to heat buildings. The picture you see on the left is combined heat and power at Stony Brook University. Whatever left over doesn't go out the chimney. They use it to heat water and make steam and heat all of the buildings in the complex. The picture on the right is a combined cycle power plant. It's the new Caithness plant that opened. run the 30% efficiency that most electric power plants have. This one's over 50%. And if you think about it, well, 30 to 50, it's 20% more. It's closer to double. 60% would be twice efficient. 50% is two-thirds more efficient, not 20%. So it's a really significant thing. You're cutting your fuel use almost in half. Fuel cells, micro CHP. Fuel cells, you turn the fuel directly into electricity, no moving parts. New technology, we haven't quite figured it out. It's amazingly expensive, but it's going to happen. Micro CHP, the CHP is combined heat and power. We have a little generator, like a little Honda gasoline generator or natural gas generator, and we use it to make electricity. And the heat that comes off of it from the exhaust and from the engine heat, we use to heat a building. We end up using about 90% of the fuel versus regular electric generator, which uses about 30% of the fuel and wastes 70. We use 90 and waste 10. We've managed to get our heat and our electric at the same time from the same box. The upwind is it's free and it's everywhere. The side is you need really big, massive wind generators, and you have to put them in places that have clean, straight wind. They don't work very well around buildings. They typically have to be twice as high up as anything else nearby. So they're best on the top of the mountains. Get a lot of complaints about them because you're putting giant wind generators on the top of those really pretty mountains. It's something we're going to have to learn to live with. We've lived with the idea of having telephone poles in front of our houses and wires everywhere and cell phone towers. At some point, we're going to have to get used to the idea of giant wind turbines. Wind is one of the few renewables that's actually cost-effective. If you went and put up one of those giant towers, the amount of energy it generates would pay for the tower. You'd get your money back. Because of that, it can happen in big scale. You don't need an incentive program. You don't need government money to make it work. Big industry can kick into wind right now and know they can make a profit on it.
I've noticed something happened with the PowerPoint, and I have presenter control, and I'm unable to give it back to you at this point. I'm not sure if your tablet may have signed you out or something, but I just want to make sure we're on the right slide. Would you like to advance the solar wind?
I'm marked wind power in New York State.
Okay, there you go.
Is they are? Okay.
Yep.
If you look, you see there are wind generators scattered all over. This is an old picture, a very old picture, probably 4 years old. If you look at it now, there are scattered all over the place. There's a lot more. Wielding wind, it works, and like I said, it's cost effective. So those are starting to come in. The places you don't see them are down around the cities, around the island. Mostly, like I said, because you need giant towers, and it's really scary to have a giant blade spinning over your head in a congested area. People just simply aren't willing to let that happen. So wind will have it'll have its place. It'll definitely generate a lot of electricity, but it'll be limited. There'll only be certain places that people are willing to put them. Solar hot water, real straightforward. You put a panel on your roof, paint it black. It's hot from the sun. It heats the water. These have been around. They were really big in the 70s. You can still put them up. They have some really fancy ones now. I see what you mean now. I just got disconnected, so let me see if I can with the slide. I don't know if you guys are seeing it. Claire, if I haven't switched over to photovoltaics, would you do that, please?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. Okay, this is the big one right now, photovoltaics. We make conductors to generate electricity directly. This has been around for a really long time. It was really expensive. And one of the big pitfalls was it required batteries to make it happen. Over time, what we came up with was the idea of a grid-tied system. I've switched to slide 29. I'm not sure if it's switching at your end. Basically, what we do now is we generate power on a rooftop. We need the power. Generate it. If we don't need it, it gets converted to match the power utilities electricity, same phase, same frequency, same voltage, and we pump it back in. Our meter is backwards. Electricity goes from your roof right to the telephone pole and powers one of your neighbors or powers somebody else. The meter spins backwards, your bill goes down. When you power at night, your meter spins forward, your bill goes back up. We call it net metering. Has basically been what makes solar popular. Because you didn't need batteries, you didn't need special lighting, you didn't need anything special. You just plug it in, and part of your electric system at the end of the month, you don't have an electric bill. Another one that's come in now is we call a feed-in tariff. If you generate more than you use, utilities will simply pay you prices for the electricity you generate. It's a big picture because the people who are buying the electricity are going to pay retail plus some more because the utility bought it for retail. You know, what we would normally sell for, what the utility would normally sell for down here for 20 cents a kilowatt, or upstate New York probably 10 or 12. Buy now for that same 20 and to resell it at 20. So big picture, somebody has to pay for it. Your electric bill goes up just slightly to cover everyone who's put solar on. Little by little, solar price will get cheaper, go away, and it'll simply be whatever the energy is worth, the people who have solar panels will get for it. Claire, it's still showing me as logged off, so if you wouldn't mind flipping forward, I'm moving over to alternative fuel and hybrid vehicles.
Sure.
The slides moving when I click them, or are they not moving?
No, you were logged out, so it gave me the control back. So I'm on the alternative fuel. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Alternative fuel and hybrid vehicles. For alternative fuel, the majority of it now is natural gas vehicles, and it's mostly buses and trucks. And they're mostly government, municipal, or major corporation owned. Like I said before, it's a lot easier to have buses run on natural gas because they all go back to one depot at the end of the day, and they could be refueled. I notice around here, a lot of the state facilities have natural gas fueling stations. A couple of the town ones have hydrogen fueling stations. It's practical for a government to do it. It's not quite practical yet for people to have a natural gas car because there aren't any natural gas stations. Hybrids are just basically a really efficient gasoline car. They run electricity sometimes, but basically it's electricity that was made because of the fuel. Not talking about electric cars, we're talking about gasoline cars or diesel cars that use the fuel a little more efficiently. You store it in a battery. When you hit the brakes, instead of the brakes squeezing and stopping the car, the electric generator kicks in and stops the car by creating electricity with that energy. Store it in the battery, use it a few minutes later when you need to accelerate the next time. Okay, next slide, please. And that's a chat question.
Everybody, I'd like to draw your attention over to the chat panel. Many of you have been using it throughout the webinar today. So to respond to Tom's question about what you're currently using at your agency or facility, go ahead and type in your answer and make sure that all participants is selected in the Send To area, and make sure you click Send, and that way Tom and I can see your responses over in the chat area. Go ahead and respond to which of the following you're currently using that you know of at your agency or facility. I don't see anyone participating at the moment, but I'll wait a couple more minutes to see if anybody wants to respond to this chat. Could be that you don't feel that any of these are being used at the moment. Okay, Angela, thank you. Alternatives. Great. So, Tom, we have some answers coming in the chat box now.
Great. Okay, I'm not seeing them because I'm still disconnected.
Goodness,
so if you wouldn't mind, that's okay. If you wouldn't mind just kind of read it out and letting us know what we got.
Sure, no problem. Angela has mentioned alternatives to pesticides and chemicals. Kelly mentions the same, alternatives to pesticides and chemicals. Chris, not sure at the moment. John has said condensing boilers and furnaces. Lynn has mentioned sustainable and waste stream separation, like you were talking earlier, and John mentioned that as well. Brenda just added actually several, weatherization, reclaiming brownfields, source waste stream separation, and another alternative to pesticides and chemicals. So those are the responses we've got.
That's great. I could say I started running this webinar a few years back, and at the time, the responses tended to be very sparse. No one really said their particular facility was doing a whole lot at the time, or people didn't know about it. So I'd say we've made some progress. I would like to comment on the pesticides and chemicals. There was a big push. As far as I know, all New York State parkland is now pesticide-free. Down here where I am, all schools, Suffolk County, all schools are pesticide-free. No more weed killer, no more bug killer, with the exception of a specific termites or bees or something like that. They don't use any more chemicals, mostly because there's kids on that grass. They've stopped it completely. All of the state facilities now, I believe, are doing the same thing. I know the state universities, we have a couple out in the Pine Barrens that are using guinea hens, chickens, to control ticks instead of pesticides. So it's becoming a popular thing. Now, rather than go through the last couple of slides, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Okay.
Now would be a good time to unmute and start yelling at me.
Sure. Everybody, just a reminder to unmute is #5. Chris already did that. And then if you want to remute your phone after you're done talking with Tom, you press #5 again. So we'll hear you come on the line. I'm going to advance the slides to the end as well. We are nearing the end of our time today. So for those of you who need to leave right at 11, I will be launching the course evaluation in just a couple of minutes. But I will leave a couple of minutes right now for questions, and then I can also stay a little bit later with Tom to ask a few more after the evaluation is completed. So go ahead and either type things in the chat box or come on the phone pressing #5 to unmute your line. So while we're waiting for questions, I am going to launch the evaluation. You'll see a window in just a minute as it launches. It usually takes a couple of minutes. And once that opens, to get started on the evaluation, you just simply click on the Next Page button. It shows up in the gray control panel box. And then there's about 12 questions to the evaluation, and if you could just click on Submit Test when you're done. Again, this is for those who need to leave right at 11. And if you have questions, Tom and I are both here and available. I can see your questions in the chat box, even though he can, and I can read to him, or you can share them on the phone line. let me just look at the chat box to see if I'm missing anything. And for those of you who see a message on the evaluation window that says you're waiting for me to start it for you, just do a refresh on that window and you should be all set. Well, not a lot of questions coming in this morning. I don't have any questions in chat right now, Tom, so I guess we'll just wait a couple more minutes for those on the line.
Okay.
I am seeing a question from Honesty about what kind of chickens you mentioned earlier that control ticks.
Actually, guinea hens, similar to a chicken, slightly different bird. They are notorious bug eaters, and they spread them out at the eastern campus of Suffolk Community College. There's a few of them out where ticks are a big issue. We have a real tick problem down here. It doesn't get cold enough for them to die off the deer, so they tend to just keep multiplying even through the winter. You know, this winter was an exception, but typically we don't have a very cold winter, so we end up with a real big tick population. And once you stop using chemicals, pesticides, it's really hard to keep them from getting out of hand. And one of the ways they've done it is with a fleet of guinea hens, they're just a small bird. I use chicken as a reference, but they kind of wander around the campus and eat ticks.
Okay, Honesty, good question. Any other questions that need to come through in the chat? You're welcome. Honesty just wrote a thank you note, Tom, and we have a couple other thank you notes coming in from participants thanking you for the webinar today. I can't see the chat panel, so I'm just going to share that with you. And those of you who don't see the webinar window, because I opened the evaluation for you, if you aren't working on the evaluation and you want to come back to the webinar window, just minimize that internet window that opens with the evaluation. You're welcome, John. Thanks for being here today and participating. And sorry you got logged off so you can't see, but you're getting some nice notes from participants. So.
Well, that's good.
Always nice.
It's much better than in person where they just throw things at me.
Yeah. Well, I think I was wondering what might have happened. You may have gotten timed out on your tablet. I'm not sure, but for some reason WebEx kicked out and gave me back control of the slides. So I apologize for that, but I think we wrapped things up quite well.
Okay. I tried starting from scratch and reconnecting. It was giving me a hard time. It wouldn't come back on, but I'm not sure what's going on with it.